Before you watch this video, make sure you already understand the knowledge dimension. Remember, it is the foundation that defines what learners need to know, whether factual, conceptual, procedural, or metacognitive. That's why Module 4 builds on everything you've already learned in the earlier modules. Once you are ready with the foundation of knowledge dimension and your job aids at hand, we can now step into the cognitive process dimension, understanding how learners think, process, and transform knowledge. Welcome in Module 4. Cognitive Process Dimensions. The process of creating a systematic storytelling presentation begins with clarity. We first define the type of knowledge to be delivered, then determine the thinking process learners must go through. The very first step is to identify the knowledge dimension. Are learners expected to recall facts, understand concepts, master procedures, or reflect on their own learning? Without this clarity, the story risks becoming directionless. Once we know what knowledge is being taught, the second step is to define how learners will think about it. Do they only need to remember? Or must they apply, analyze, evaluate, or even create something new? This defines the level of cognitive process. The power of systematic storytelling presentation comes from alignment. The knowledge dimension answers what content must be delivered. The cognitive dimension answers how learners process it. Together, they form a precise learning objective, which the story is built around. This sequence ensures that storytelling is not random or decorative. It becomes systematic, driven by purpose, aligned with objectives, and measurable in its outcomes. Now that you understand the foundation of systematic storytelling presentation, starting from knowledge, then building the thinking process, now we can move on to cognitive process dimensions. After breaking down the tools and job aids into several elements within the knowledge dimension, the next step is to determine how far these tools will be taught. Should learners only remember them, understand them, apply them, analyze them, evaluate them, or even recreate them? In this way, each material is not just introduced but directed toward the thinking level that aligns with the learning objectives. You can find lists of verbs for each level of the taxonomy on the web, but it is always better to read the book directly for deeper understanding. This process creates alignment. The knowledge dimension tells us what is being taught. The cognitive dimension defines how far the knowledge should be processed. This is the essence of the systematic storytelling presentation, using stories to align with the intended learning outcomes. When we design learning objectives, we always phrase them as, student will be able to, followed by an action verb. This ensures that objectives are measurable, observable, and aligned with both the knowledge and the cognitive dimensions. Every knowledge must already be standardized as tools to perform a job. Your task as instructors is to deliver learning aligned with those standards. That means every learning objective must follow a clear formula, an action verb representing the cognitive process dimension, plus a standardized tool representing the knowledge dimension. For example, students will be able to operate the handheld metal detector, where operate is the verb from the cognitive process, and the HHMD is the standardized tool from the knowledge dimension. If you already understand how to create learning objectives, the next step is to determine your teaching methodology, that is, how you deliver the lesson at each cognitive level. Each level of the cognitive process dimension requires its own method of teaching. For example, remembering may rely on drills or repetition, while analyzing may use case studies. Because each level has its own unique delivery style, we will discuss this in a special video dedicated entirely to teaching methodology.